Yo guys, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be going over the two different ways I like to set up for float fishing for steelhead or salmon. The first one I go over will be the method I like to use when the water is a little high and muddy. And then the second method I will go over is when the water's a lot lower or clearer and you get those more finicky steelhead or salmon. So we're going to get right into it, guys, and we're going to start with my deep and muddy water setup here. Alright guys, so we're gonna get right into the first setup here. Like I said, this one will be for when the water is traditionally a little more muddy or the water is pushing pretty fast. I'll show you how I rig that up. So the very first step, the very first thing I like to do is either grab like a 15 gram float or a 20 gram float, whether you're gonna float a half ounce or a 3/4 ounce weight. And I like to fish these fixed style floats. This one here is one made from my buddy Brian Lee Smith. You can look him up on Facebook or Silver Wolf. He makes very awesome custom floats. So that's what I'll start off with. You want to start with two of these little pegs, if you would. They're just little pieces of rubber that will hold your fixed float in place. And then I will run that down to a barrel swivel. Now after my barrel swivel, I like to take, so I'm running 14-pound main line, and then I'll run that down to my swivel. And then from my swivel here, I will have a sinker line that I like to call. And for this one, I'll use 12-pound line. And I'll do maybe like 10 to 12 inches of this. And then I'll use like a bullet weight or an egg sinker. And I'll put two beads on it with a little bit of silicone tubing on there just to keep it nice and quiet. And then from that, I will run onto another barrel swivel, which will then go to my main line, which I like to run 10 to 8-pound line on this setup here. So once you have that barrel swivel and you tie on your leader line, I like to run maybe like a 3 to 4 foot leader, depending on how fast the water's pushing. If the water's pushing really fast, you want a shorter leader. You definitely don't want to be flossing any fish with this setup. And from there, I will run it down to a size 6. I prefer size 6. These are trout bead hooks, and then I will peg them with any little 10mm bead as my go-to, and I've been having a lot of success on this yellow or chartreuse bead, if you would. So it's a very simple setup, guys, and it's super effective. If you've seen me catching fish in these past videos from the winter time when the water's been high and muddy, this is all I use. And if you want to run deeper, all you do is move your fixed float, you run it up your line. If you see that you're hitting bottom, you shorten up on it a little bit. So like I said, very simple setup, very easy to set it up. It's not very time consuming to get it going if you break off in the river. So I highly recommend this. All right guys, so the next float fishing setup I'm gonna go over here is a fixed shot float, so a patterned float. And this one I like to use, like I said, when the water's a little more clear, it's lower, and those fish are being a little bit pickier with how that presentation of the bead or your spawn sack or your jig and waxy, whatever you're throwing, how that looks under the water. So to start off, we're going to start off exactly the same as the last setup. You're going to start with your tubing, 2 pieces of tubing for a fixed float. For this one, I have a fast deep 20-gram Raven float. And once again, that is a fixed float, and I'm running this on 14-pound monofilament. You want to make sure you have mono on your main line because you want that line to float. Then from this one here, I'm just gonna just peg small split shots, and you can see I'm using some removable split shots, and that's only because I ran out of my non-removable, my round split shots. So I always carry these in case of emergency, but I highly recommend you use the non-removable ones because it'll prevent twists from happening in your line. The water will flow a lot easier when there's not these ears on the split shots. So I definitely recommend the non-removable split shots for that. But we're just gonna pattern our way down to a barrel swivel here. And I always like to start with a heavy sinker split shot right at the bottom of the float. That way that float stays cocked and it stays upright the whole time. And then you're just gonna work your way down and weight all the way down to a barrel swivel. Now with this setup, I only use 1 barrel swivel. The last one you saw I used 2, because simply your split shots are just gonna be all on your main line, and you're gonna run them down to a barrel swivel. And then from here, I just have a 10-pound leader line. This one's about 4 to 5 feet, and once again I have it traditionally pegged, just a small little 10mm bead there on my size 6 trout bead hook, and I've tried size 8 trout bead hooks and they just don't stick fish as much as size 6s do, so that is my go-to size for hook. So once again, this one is just as easy to set up. Just make sure you have different size split shots and make sure your shots add up to the grams that your float will take. So this is a 20-gram float and I've got about 19 grams of weight on here, so my float sits right at that white line there. You always want to make sure your float's sitting right about there so that you can detect the slightest little bites from any steelhead or salmon. But that is pretty much it, guys. Those are my 2 main float fishing setups. There it is. Those are my secrets. Now you guys know exactly what I use every day to go out and catch those nice steelhead, salmon, anything you see me float fishing for. I'm either running 1 or 2 of those setups, or I have 2 rods and I have each set up on a different rod. So these are very successful setups. They, like I said, they work, they catch fish. So if you haven't yet, make sure you go out and try them. Hopefully you can get on some fish. If you do, I always recommend catch and release. We want to preserve our fishing as much as we can, guys. So once again, thanks for watching. If you did enjoy this video, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, subscribe, and thanks for watching.